You're listening to the Ballet Piano Podcast, lifting the lid on dance accompaniment.
Hello listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Ballet Piano Podcast in Conversation series. My name is Chris Hobson and with me is Mr. Matt Gregory.
Hello listeners.
And this week we are really pleased, proud and excited to be joined by Mr. Jonathan Still.
Hello.
Hello, how are you, Jonathan?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much for joining us. It's really nice to see you.
Yes, it really is.
Lovely to see you too.
Are you comfortable? Are you ready to get started?
I'm ready, yeah.
Very good.
So how's things been? How's your lockdown?
I'm one of those people who loved the lockdown.
Did you?
Yeah. Just loved the opportunity to do nothing or to do what I wanted.
What did you get up to? PhDing?
PhDing.
Is the PhD finished yet?
Not yet.
This is like an ambush already
I
with
thought,
20 seconds in.
did my people not tell you not to mention the PhD?
Well, we have to
the
at
list
some
of
point.
forbidden questions, yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about your career. I mean, it's a long career, isn't it? And it's still going, of course. So how long have you been playing for class?
For class, well, I started January 1986.
Wow.
So,
gosh, were you even born then yet, Chris?
That was 4 months before I was born.
I mean, what made you decide to get into ballet class playing? I mean, we were having this chat just before we started the record, because a lot of pianists obviously train as musicians first and then sort of get into ballet playing, don't they?
Yeah.
Fall into it. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, they were going to be my very words. I fell into it. I did my first degree in Russian and Sauerkraut, but I was always kind of not sure what I wanted to do when I left school. First of all, I was thinking I was going to go to music college, but then I didn't. Did a degree in languages, and then I started a PhD in linguistics, and then just got utterly fed up and thought I wish I'd been a musician instead. So I did a load of part-time jobs to fund my way, as you know, through an external diploma, and one of those was at Weinberger's, the music publishers, and I was basically looking for somewhere that had a piano so I could practice for my diploma. That, by the way, just to cut to the end of the story, I never took. So while I was at Weinberger's, I saw this advert, and this was in the days when you saw an advert in the Evening Standard in the vacancies.
Whoa,
you know,
brilliant.
And replied by post. You know, so I saw this advert for a job at the Royal Academy of Dancing, as it was then, for a pianist for ballet. And they said, you know, no experience required, you will be trained. And I thought, I just thought, well, they'll have pianos, you know, whatever the job is, I can just sort of do the job and then practice in the evenings or something. So that's how I started. I did the audition. And I must say, in the audition where the teacher was Debbie Wayne, for those who would remember her, she set about 3 exercises, and there were like 3 dancers in the studio.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, wow, this is fantastic. You know, when you've just been used to playing on your own, and then suddenly you've got these people doing things to your music.
Yeah.
And anyway, amazingly, I mean, it amazed me. I got the job. I hated it afterwards. I did get it. You know.
So when you did that audition,
Yeah.
did you even really know what you were doing?
No, not at all.
So-
No, absolutely not at all. No.
Can you remember that audition?
Yeah, like it was yesterday.
And what did you know what to play, or
Well,
presumably you didn't know any of the ballet classics then, because you were just starting.
No, I didn't. Except that I think I looked at what it might be. You know, I kind of had a guess, and I thought, well, it'll, you know, what's a ballet? And Les Sylphides came to mind. So I sort of practiced all the stuff that's in Les Sylphides. I mean, I did know some of the ballet rep, because you do, you know, as a kid when you're learning the piano.
Yeah.
All those things like
the greatest classical books. And
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I used to, which this stood me in very good stead for later. I absolutely loved the music of Coppelia. My parents had a record of it when I was a kid, and I had the standard classics book of ballet tunes.
Yeah.
And, and so I could probably, even as a child, I could play through the Mazurka from Coppelia from memory, just from having played
that would stand
it.
you in good stead for any ballet class, though.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
it comes up in virtually every class. That one.
Yeah,
Play us a
except,
Mazurka, it goes like this.
Well, no, but it doesn't, does it? It says, I'd like a Mazurka. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. And you go, that's when you just want to kill yourself.
Do you know, not slagging anybody off, but I was playing for David Yao this week. And he did set his Mazurka on. Well, have a nice Mazurka, please, Mr. Hobson. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And as much as I love you, David, it was bloody slow.
Yeah. So you got the job at the RAD. Is that where you first started working then, playing for class?
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
I was there for, I think, 8 months, 9 months.
Oh, really?
Like that. Yeah.
So playing full time, how many classes a day?
Oh, just wall to wall syllabus. I mean, the RAD.
Oh, it's the syllabus, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were some free classes, as they called them. I used to say free, but everywhere in chains, but the RAD was so different then, because it was so, the teacher's course at the time, the LRAD, was all based around learning the syllabus. So you go in, maybe you'd have an hour and a quarter free class at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day would be coaching, and learning the syllabus and learning to teach the syllabus. And,
was this for the full-time dancers that were on the full? Was there a full-time course then?
Well, no, there was a full-time licentiate course, the LRAD, which is basically the teacher's course.
Yeah.
But then there was a professional dancers teaching certificate, which is now the diploma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's not go into all the
history of the RAD.
The history of the RAD qualifications and how they've changed their names.
Well, we won't, don't worry.
But somebody else can do a podcast about that.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's this actually, the important part was that I was also playing for the PDTC course. I mean, I have, anyone from the RAD who's listening to this, I'm sorry, but I absolutely hated that job. I detested it. I just used to sit there, even after a month, thinking, what on earth am I doing here?
Yeah.
Because playing for syllabus class was so boring.
Yeah.
And especially when you don't know why you're doing it. And then suddenly, you play for a class, an hour and a half class at 1 o'clock or something. And the teacher would say, I think we'll go through the advanced to adage, for an hour and a half.
Gosh.
And, yeah.
Wow.
No matter what else was on the, on the menu, supposedly.
Yeah. I mean, just going off topic, I remember doing the ISTD syllabus as a dancer.
Yeah.
And you do the warm-up, the set warm-up to warm the body up, and then you'd move on into the syllabus. And spend the whole hour working on one particular exercise.
Yeah.
So if that's the same in ballet, you're sat there playing the same thing for an hour, aren't you?
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, it was only when I left the RAD and went to play for vocational schools, then I suddenly realised what ballet class was for. I know it sounds ridiculous, but all the time that I was at the RAD, I had no idea what ballet class was for, because you're in this environment where people are just learning the syllabus for the sake of learning the syllabus, not as a means to becoming a dancer.
Again, when I didn't understand what a full ballet class was until I left college.
All right.
Because even, you don't get through the whole of a class. Sometimes you skip exercises to concentrate.
Yeah.
So it's only after graduating and going and doing an open class, you realize what a full class is like.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the same for you.
Similar. Anyway, so just to
go back.
Go back. So I hated the job at the RAD because of that.
Yeah.
But I was also, two really significant things was that I did play a bit for the PDTC course there. And on that course, at the time that year was Jackie Barrett, and it was through her. And she said to me in a class, you should be, you should audition for a company because you're good.
Yeah.
And the other, so that was one thing, and I did, it was through her that I eventually auditioned for Festival, as it was then, and now EMB. And also the other person who was there that I worked with was John O'Brien, who is probably the most influential person in my life. And as soon as I left the RAD, I then went to play for him for nearly everything he did eventually.
And where was that at?
Well, it was at Pineapple, at the dance, City Lit, the old City Lit. He did 2 classes, Monday and Friday mornings.
Yeah.
We did a course for Olympic divers, like anything John did, I just kind of
you said yes to. There are some teachers like that, aren't there?
Exactly.
Whatever they offer you, you just say yes to because it's going to be a good gig, or it's well paid, or it's just going to be a really good thing to be involved in.
But also, John was a good friend, and he was somebody that to play for was just like a joy. It was like having fun. It was like whereas a lot of ballet classes aren't fun in that way. But his stuff really moved, and he was very appreciative of music. And
so you did 8 months at the RAD and started working with John.
Yeah.
So you started freelancing.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah. And I started. I think one of the first places I went to was the Erdang, when it was in Shelton Street.
Yeah.
And I think Justine Berry was about 11 or something.
Wow. Oh, gosh. And that's...
There.
Wow. Yeah.
So a lot of the people that I work with now, who I work for now, are people that...
When you've had a career as long as yours, though...
Thank you.
I mean, I don't mean... I mean, you've seen dancers grow up, haven't you?
Yeah.
And then you will have...
Well, some of them.
You will... I mean, you will have played for them at school...
Yeah.
Then into the company, then on their teacher training courses, then as teachers and as examiners.
Yeah.
So you've probably seen, their careers.
Yeah.
So that's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the same is true.
Amazing.
The Prague Masterclasses where I played for, it's now 18 years this year.
Yeah.
We've seen the same. We saw people come in, when they were 17 or just about in their last year of vocational school.
Yeah.
And then they had their career, and then you meet them, that they're administrating the theatre or something.
Yeah.
Or they've got a child that is coming to the summer school next year. It's bizarre.
Yeah, that's it's funny, isn't it? So how the Prague Masterclass is 18 years old now, right? Was its 18th year this year in 2020?
Yeah.
And you set that up, didn't you?
Well, I wouldn't say I set it up, but
you were the first pianist on it.
Yeah. I mean, it was me, Mark Keimer, and Chris Hampson. We just literally sat in the Slavia cafe by the river in Prague, and literally on the back of an envelope went, "How could we do this? How much do you think a teacher would want? How much do you think we should, do you know what I mean?" And it was literally on the back of it. We should have kept the envelope. But
I mean, the Prague Masterclass has become, it's really famous now. You see them all the dancers come to this, open classes with their Prague Masterclass t-shirt, and it's all signed by the celeb teachers and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, the Prague one is big. I remember I was in some sort of staff meeting, wasn't it, at work, and they were talking about where the students were going to be doing over the summer, where they were going to go and study, how long for, and so many of them go to the Prague sessions every year, and they have them from all sorts of schools. And come back raving.
I think we don't really have that sense because, to us, it's like the house where you live, isn't it? We're just used to it going year by year. I've actually got a box that it's not marked Prague, but I mean, it might as well be, because I literally, every year, I just open the box and take all the things out that, I'll take to Prague with me every year. It's become that kind of regular.
And so you've been doing it every year, though, for 18 years. It's your bread and butter as well, isn't it? You just enjoy doing it. You know what you're doing when you get there. Like you say, what to pack, how to pack.
And you can look forward to it, can't you? as a summer break that you're obviously working for as well.
It's better doing a summer gig in Prague, isn't it, than a summer gig in, I don't know, the arse end of London somewhere.
Yeah, well, we could name.
No, we won't, because we'll get in trouble. I'll have the legal eagles on standby.
I mean, the thing is, it just. I think what's really interesting about that summer school is that it's not purely about ballet. You know, it's the fact that it's in Prague, and I think later, I think other people have cottoned on. You know that. You know, why not make it a kind of double nice thing? And I think it's lovely to see the students just, you know, wide-eyed and go, this is amazing. I mean, it's all part of the experience.
Yeah. Obviously they do ballet class, but what's the sort of curriculum like for that?
Well, it's pretty much the same every year. It's
obviously repertoire.
Ballet class. Well, ballet class, and then the girls solo, boys solo in the morning, and that takes you up to lunchtime. And then in the afternoon, there's a contemporary class, pas de deux class, and something else. Yeah, the something else kind of varies. Yeah. But you know, there might be some kind of group repertoire, but basically it's pas de deux and contemporary. And you do get a lot of people sort of veering towards the pas de deux sometimes.
I was thinking choose.
Well, no, they can't. No, they shouldn't choose, but they, you know.
And has that changed over the 18 years?
What's that?
The sort of the curriculum.
Well,
because 18 years is a long time.
But you know, it hasn't. And one of the reasons it's that thing of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, and it has worked. And I mean, I'm sure there are things that you could change with it, but it has just worked. And you kind of don't want to tinker with something that works that well.
Yeah.
If you're a dancer, I suppose, or a student, your dream day is going to be go in, do a ballet class, do some solos, a little bit of contemporary and some pas de deux, isn't it? That ticks every single box of what you want to be doing when you're training and enjoy doing.
I guess.
I imagine so. Yeah.
And do they get a lot of downtime? Because it's like a summer school holiday, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they get plenty of downtime.
Yeah. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it, but it's harder work than you'd think.
Yeah.
Because you're having to instantly relate, you know, with kind of superstar teachers.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, make their show work, so to speak. And, you know, sometimes, I mean, I think the idea that the idea at the start of it was that students are, I'm educationalist, block your ears now, but, you know, students are inspired by people who are still doing it. You know, however good, however many years of pedagogical training a teacher has, there's something about seeing somebody who's literally just, you know, still got the sweat from Swan Lake on their brow, you know? And
well, I had a Google at the Prague website, and I don't know if you've been on it recently, but it's got all the past teachers,
right?
And there's some crazy names, like big names that have taught on the Prague Masterclass. And this, like you say, there's something about someone that's still a principal dancer now going in to teach.
And
you know,
I mean, the nice thing though is that they do both. You know, they've had some really excellent, you know, older teachers as well, but what I was getting at was that sometimes you've got somebody who's been brought on board because they're, you know, still dancing and they may not have that much experience teaching. Interesting thing is most of the time they're pretty good at teaching. You know what I mean? That's probably a subject I should keep quiet about.
That's the sort of like, you know, okay, dipping my toe ever so slightly into that little pool that you just mentioned. It can be, though, it's just a natural experience, isn't it? And it's just a natural way of doing it that some dancers who are still dancing have. And then sometimes you can go through a teacher's course and it becomes something that they weren't at the, you know, that they weren't meant to be. If you just stayed where you were at the start, you would have been a better teacher.
Yeah.
Because it's, I think somebody said, Matt, it definitely wasn't you, was it? You know, some of the students who come from some of these great ballet schools can sometimes have the artistry kicked out of them in favour of technique. And sometimes I found teachers' courses can do that to teachers as well. You become almost like this person who's doing things because you think you have to, as opposed to doing things that you know are right.
Yeah, and I think the worst thing about those courses, I mean, they're probably a necessary evil, but the worst thing about them is that the teachers start performing to their assessors.
Yeah.
So actually what they're doing is showing their assessor that they can teach in the way that is going to be given a good mark, but then they carry, instead of just going, okay, I've done that, now I'll
stick it in a box, take what's good about it and then throw the rest away.
But sometimes they never quite get away from that. And I think that's a lot to do with how disciplined dance instruction is, that it's very difficult to get that teacher out of your head.
Yeah.
But I'm going to drop a name here. I mean, I don't mean name drop. I don't mean just like you.
Wait for the clang.
No. I don't mean in that sense. But I mean actually, rather than saying a teacher. But like last year, or this year rather, in Prague, Loretta Scales was teaching.
Yeah.
And apart from the fact that she was just really at ease at setting a class, I don't know how much she's taught before. What was really noticeable about her was that if something wasn't quite what she wanted
musically,
she'd say, "Oh, can I have something that's a bit more like this?" Or I mean, she would also say, "That's great" when it was great.
Yeah.
But you can work with some teachers for 10 years and they will never pass a comment, good or bad, on what you do, and therefore your relationship doesn't grow. Whereas with Loretta, by the end of 3 days, we got somewhere. Do you know what I mean? We were a different kind of entity between us, because the second class I went in, it's like I think it's especially with reading people's pirouette exercises. Do they want something that is kind of but or fluid?
And
actually, most of the time, as it happened, Loretta wanted something quite but.
Yeah.
But you find those things
That's
out.
what I've always said about Loretta. She's quite no.
Good butch pirouette.
No, she's not. She's lovely.
But anyway, I mean, that's a perfect example. Whereas, to my knowledge, I don't think Loretta's done a training course, but actually she knows much better how to work with a pianist than a lot of people who've done the course and got a gold star.
Yeah.
People have said, though, haven't they? People being David, that music instruction and how you relate to a pianist is something that could be drastically improved on more than one teacher's course.
Yeah.
Just so we're aware, that was said by David Yao and not Chris Hobson.
You can follow the podcast team by visiting the social media channels. Search for Ballet Piano Podcast on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter for up-to-date information and content about the podcast.
And so is this where the PhD is born from?
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly where it comes from.
So what
do you want the full story?
I really want the full story.
Right. Well, so the full story is this: when I left the RAD in whenever it was, 1986, the year I joined. Amazing career, yeah. And then and then went to 3 years freelancing, and then full-time at ENB for 3 years, and then I went to Berlin for 3 years for to work with the I can't even remember the name.
I've written it down.
I know what it is,
but I can never say it.
It's a Deutsche Oper Berlin. It's just what was in my head is that now, of course, that doesn't exist because they've merged the 3 companies together. Anyway, and then I went to Berlin. I came back. I did a tour with Wayne Sleep. I worked with Gillian Din, lots of other people, did lots of professional experience. And then the job at the RAD came up, and which was at the time it was assistant music director, brackets technical.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you thought it had gone so well the first time you went back to have another go?
I was going to say, you went back.
No. Oh, sorry.
It's the RAD.
Well, because to be perfectly honest, I can tell you exactly what it was. It was when I was on my 3rd production of Onegin in a company.
Yeah.
I thought, it's just, it's like not wanting to go to Milton Keynes 3 times. So I just, you've done it all before.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's like Groundhog Day, and I thought, no, I want to do something else now, and actually there was a job going I applied for, and either it just didn't. I think the job itself dissolved, but I nearly got a job working on the teachers course at the Royal Ballet School. I mean, this is like a century ago, but I was already looking to kind of move sideways, so to speak. Anyway, the job at the RAD came out. I didn't actually know about it officially. It was just that Carolyn Parker, who was the head of music at the time, booked me for the Genet competition, and she said, "Oh, as you know, we're looking for a pianist or something." And I said, well, why didn't you tell me? And she said, well, I didn't think you'd be interested,
Because you only spent 8 months here last time.
We didn't think you liked us.
Well, I mean, it's a completely different place to what it was, But anyway, and the other thing was I was a different person as well. So long story short, the worst part for me of that interview was convincing Carolyn and the RAD that I really wanted the job.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did, and I got it. But part of my job there was to teach music, and I remember, oh God, it started with there was at one point they used to teach. They used to do the Associated Board theory exams as part of the teaching diploma that they had at the time. And the reason for that was that it was just quicker to let people do, a theory exam done by somebody else. And I remember having to mug up, can you believe it? Having to mug up grade 3 theory.
Because you've done it when you were younger, and then that's it. You tick the box.
And do you know what it was? It wasn't about time signatures. It was actually about notes of a scale. It's going, I don't know why. Why is that G sharp and not A flat or something? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And anyway, I remember having to teach myself that. And I was thinking, why on earth are they learning this? I mean, there was a practical reason, which is that it was easier to outsource the exam. And then eventually I got given I was offered and I took the job of teaching the music courses, and they gave me kind of free rein to do what I wanted. Oh, and there's a very famous phrase by Robert Frost. He says that, free verse is like playing tennis with the net down, and it's like that. If somebody says you can teach whatever you want, it's not a freedom, but anyway, there was this really curious thing of having been in the professional world, and as we know, when you're a pianist in a vocational school or a company, it's your job to understand the teacher, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you develop ballet ears.
Yeah. And going back to the Loretta thing, you spend the first class reading that teacher, don't you? Their likes and dislikes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So suddenly at the RAD, it's the other way around. You tell the teacher what they need to know about music in order to talk to you. And I thought, this is all back to front, and it's back to front for the teacher as well, because in the teaching practice, I don't know whether this still happens, but this is how they would run it. You'd have the students teaching each other with the class tutor observing. They would then have to ask the pianist, for what they wanted, run the exercise, and at the end, the teacher would say to the pianist, "So, what do you think about the way she delivered that exercise? And would that ever happen?"
Exactly. No.
No. So it's a completely. I mean, it's not the fact that it's an artificial situation that is wrong, because we need artificial simulation. If you're going to pilot a plane or something, it's the fact that the situation is not the one that you actually encounter in real life, neither for the pianist nor the...
You can say the same, I suppose, for some of these courses that train musicians, pianists to play for class, can't you? Because you learn by going in there and effectively getting it wrong, don't you? I've learned everything, or most things that I know, through making errors. And I'm sure if I'd have read it in a book, I wouldn't have learned anywhere near as quickly.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most interesting articles, I can't remember what it's called now, but there's a very famous American sociologist called Howard Becker, who was a jazz musician before he became a sociologist. And he wrote an article a few years ago saying that some of the worst jazz groups he'd ever seen were those that formed at sociological conferences, because they were formed as students who hadn't been grounded in the kind of rules of jazz, which are, you don't play. I think it was something like, I don't know because I'm not a jazz expert. I mean, it was something like, you don't play 8 times through the song in your solo because otherwise everyone else has got to. And things like that. And what he was saying is that in something like playing for jazz, you learn by being completely mortified when you get it wrong.
Yeah.
You don't learn by sort of having a list of the rules before you go off and do it. And I think there's something, I'm not saying that the best way to learn for ballet is to be mortified in a class.
No, but
it does help.
Yeah. And you have said to me, one class where you've got that adrenaline and that pressure and that fear of getting something wrong, or on the flip side, achieving something and something's really worked, one class of that is worth 10 lessons with a teacher and learning how to play for class.
Yeah, because
it's the deep end, isn't it?
Because sometimes
you quickly learn from doing.
And one of the things you learn is that, it doesn't have to be pure gold every time your hands touch the keys.
No.
I mean, if you're in a learning environment, and I've found this with people that I've worked with, they say, what would be the best thing for this exercise? And what if I did this? And I don't want to be, of course, none of us want to be boring, but there are times when you just play a load of, rubbish.
Yeah.
Because it gets you through this. And that's being, scare quotes, a good pianist. It's actually having the lack of self-esteem to play really badly when you have to.
Yeah.
To put that on a t-shirt.
I know what you mean. If a teacher's just doing a tiny little medicine exercise or a tiny little technical exercise that is not a big on shame on,
you don't want.
I'll just play something that's completely improvised as long as the rhythm and meter is right, and it's probably just 32 bars long. Let's say that is the whole exercise, and it's not an on shame on. It's just something like a medicine step.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's probably not your best ever playing, but it works and it fits and it's
functional.
right.
It gets you ready to be, and it supports what we're playing for. It supports the dancers doing what they're doing and training for what they're training.
Yeah.
So that all happened at the RAD. So how long were you there second time?
Well, I haven't really, So
he loves a tangent.
I do love a tangent. Yeah. So
please make a legal U-turn.
So when
return.
So when you were at the RAD, you were teaching music.
Yeah. So this is why I haven't finished my PhD. all the tangents. So I was teaching music, and I mean there were many things. Every year I had to try a different course because there is, in my view, there isn't anything much that connects a theory, the conventions of time signature with a practice of marking exercises. Just remember, there's something you can try and relate it if you want, but I like one of the real kind of significant moments for me was I was standing in front of the class with a flip chart and a marker pen, and I didn't want to teach the subject, but unfortunately, this is the thing about having the freedom to teach what you want. You think I'm going to go in there and teach them this, and then you find that three other teachers, plus their teaching practice mentor, plus an examiner, plus their old teacher have said, well, I'm sure you're learning all about time signature in your music classes. Haven't they taught you that? So you suddenly find yourself having to fulfill the expectations of other people, which I guess that really is part of the job as well. So sometimes I'd just be forced into the situation where they'd say, can you explain the difference between duple and triple meter to us, And I'd try. And I remember just once standing in front of this flip chart with picture of, as you do with the bar lines and crotchets and everything. And I just looked at it and thought, what is this? Do you know what I mean? What are these? What have I just drawn? Because it doesn't relate to anything in the world. It doesn't relate to a piece of music. It doesn't relate to them.
Yeah.
And they're looking at it going, well, what are they?
Yeah.
And that it's, if you want to go into a picture of what made me think I kind of needed to do a PhD, and that was one of the things.
Yeah.
So it's actually both those things. It's the social power relations of, and that kind of artificiality of the teaching course, if you like, or any course. It doesn't matter that it's the REG. It could be anywhere. I mean, I've met teachers from all over the world who've been through the same torture at the hands of some musician. It's not just the REG. So I had one student in a class who she'd been handing round notes because she didn't think I taught the course to her satisfaction. So she actually emailed all her colleagues in the class, like the syllabus that she'd been taught in her previous place. Gee, thanks.
The music.
Yeah. Because I hadn't taught. She thought I should have taught them what a saraband was because she'd learned what a saraband was. So I wonder if I'm allowed to say it's against GDPR. It probably is, isn't it? But,
what, to say the person's name? Or?
No, I'm not going to say the person's name. No. That's all right. She probably wouldn't listen anyway.
Gosh.
Not cool enough to listen to us.
So how long were you at the RAD then? That second time?
15 years.
Wow. So when did you leave?
2013, end of 2013.
Yeah, and then you've been sort of freelancing ever since, haven't you?
Yeah, I was very lucky because I left. It was quite a kind of sudden decision to leave in 2013 at the end, and I was just incredibly lucky. The week that it was a kind of I phased myself out. So although I left in October, I did like one day a week till December or something.
Okay. Yeah.
And but the week that I said I was leaving and I reduced my hours, got a phone call from Andy Higgs saying, "I don't suppose he's like, I know you're really busy. I don't suppose you're free, are you, to play for class next week?" And I said, "Well, actually, I am." And it was like for the first time in 10 years, anybody had asked me that, because they were so used to me saying,
I'm going to just say you're never free.
But
You're always
trying to book you for this. You've never been free.
But then there were like 2 years when I worked. But most of my money came from working for EMP.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an object lesson there because the 2 years after that were absolutely terrible. But it was just really lucky because they were doing Corsair, Nutcracker, and something else.
How did you get the job there the first time? Did you say you did 2 or 3 years full time?
3. Yeah.
When you left the RAD first time.
Well, yeah, the first time. So Jackie Barrett. Jackie Barrett got me. She didn't get me into.
Was she a dancer there at that point, or was she'd started ballet mistressing?
No, she was just doing the course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, she was doing the course at the RED, and I went around for lunch at her house, and she had a few people there. It was like a Sunday lunchtime, and the pianist from ENB, Kevin Darvis, was there at the time.
Yeah.
And he just thought, and then I think he said, "Oh, send in your CV or something." And then I got an audition that I was late for. Can you imagine? I lived in Clapham at the time. I got on the 137 bus, and
there was no traffic in them days.
Oh, there was. Yeah. Oh God, that was just the most. I was late for my audition at.
Who was on the panel?
I can't.
Can you remember?
I can't remember. Anyway, and then I started playing, and I used to go at the. I suppose it's still like that to a degree, but I would get booked to do principal calls at lunchtime, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, how did I get? I don't know. Oh no, I do know. Yeah, I think I just remember I was in Jordan with the company because they were doing Les Sylphides in Jordan. It was like the best phone message ever saying, I've ruined the story now, but it was
So this is after you've done the audition.
Oh yeah. No, this is.
Have you already got the job at this point?
Yeah.
Or are you waiting for the call to say you've got it?
No, I was just freelancing.
Yeah.
I was just freelancing. So I was going in and out and playing for principal calls, but I wasn't full time. The audition was to see whether I was good enough to play for class.
Oh, I see.
But I did also play for calls and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I got this phone message saying, would you be free to play Les Sylphides, or be a standby pianist for Les Sylphides? And then right at the end of the message, oh, by the way, it's in Jordan.
Nice.
Yeah. So I went to Jordan with Festival, and Betty Anderton, she said, oh, would you ever consider doing a full-time job? And I said, well, it's kind of, pointless question because you don't have a full-time job. And she said, oh, well, that may change. And it did change. And the funny thing is, I don't know, I went through a year of being a bit fed up. I think I did a lot of temp work, like secretarial work. And I was working for this Japanese market research company, typing their reports and that kind of thing. And they were basically on the way to be going, I didn't know they were going to be bankrupt, but that's where they were headed.
Yeah.
So the staff just got smaller and smaller, and I kept on taking more and more people's work on. And they said, oh, well, would you like the office manager's job? This is like, 5 o'clock on a Friday evening.
Yeah.
Would you like the office manager's job because it's coming up? And I thought, well, I think this is probably it. I've tried long enough to work in the arts, and it's not really working out. I haven't got much work and all that kind of thing. And, it would be a stable salary, all that kind of thing. So I thought, maybe I will. And then
take a picture of my face.
I was just going to say to the listeners, I wish you could see Matt's face here because his mouth is touching my kitchen table.
So you nearly sort of left the business, as it were.
Yeah. And then the same evening, I got a message from E&B saying the pianist job. I think because was it the year that Schaufus went to Berlin? He got kicked out and they changed the locks, and then he took a load of people with him, and David Johnson followed him to Berlin. So then suddenly there was a pianist place vacant there, and they called me up and said, did I want the job? On the same Friday as I'd been offered the other job. And I said to my partner at the time, I really don't know what to do. And I just thought, oh, well, I sat on it.
Yeah.
I sat on it till Monday morning, really not knowing. And I think I more or less tossed a coin and just took the other one.
Wow.
Just as well, really. I mean, apart from anything, the Japanese company went bankrupt long after. But
That's crazy.
How different things would have been if you hadn't have taken that job.
Yeah.
We would never have met, probably.
Yes.
Wow, I'm so glad you took it.
I could have been your typist. Oh, I already am.
If you're enjoying this episode, then why not visit the website balletpianopodcast.com and join the mailing list. You can access past episodes, transcripts, music playlists, and so much more. It will ensure you never miss new episodes or updates. That's balletpianopodcast.com.
Well, speaking of typing, your website is how I first became familiar with you when I first started doing this job. And it's an absolute wealth of resource and stories and just pure excellence.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I literally had somebody message us today saying, oh, we always read Jonathan's blog. We always follow his website.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
One of my favorite posts that you wrote, and you reminded me saying that you were late for your interview or audition, was playing for a class. And if you're late as a pianist, how you feel going into that class 5 or 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
And, whether you've got the bus there or something's happened. And I was having a conversation a couple of days ago with a colleague, and we were saying, you can leave your house, you take say you leave an hour and a half before the class starts. Something bad happens, the tubes are not running, whatever, the bus breaks down. If you're 30 or 40 minutes late for class, people seem to be much more appreciative. Whereas if you're only 5 minutes late, they look at you as if you go, well, you could have left 5 minutes earlier.
Yes, exactly.
The later you are, the more appreciative people are of you.
Did I write that on the blog?
It was something along those lines.
Because I was going to say, that is one of my life tips. If you're going to be late, make it really late.
Yeah.
You know, I have done it. I've actually done it when I'm going to be 5 minutes late.
But you just hung around.
Hung around because, as you say, I mean, not necessarily for class, but otherwise.
That's true. Actually, I never thought about that. Yeah. If you're a few minutes late, they'll grumble, won't they?
Yeah, but if you do it properly.
I did once completely. I did completely oversleep and missed an entire class. But I mean, like, no kidding. I just woke up.
Your heart sinks, doesn't it, when you're going to be that late?
When I lived together, I'd gone out on the Friday night. I was working at a summer school for some sort of ballet school connected to royalty a few summers ago. And we'd gone out the night before, and quite a few of the teachers there. Ekma Kamedov was there, a few of the pianists were out, and it was a nice Friday evening. Next morning, alarm clock's going off. I must have pressed snooze or something like that. I'd gone straight back to sleep, and the phone's ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. So, what's going on? It's Kiko phoning me up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and suddenly this dread. It's not Saturday, it's Friday, and I should have been in work. That was horrendous. That was really bad. Woke up 2 minutes in the shower and legged it over to the Piccadilly line to try and get to work as quickly as possible. Getting in there, like, I'm really sorry.
I think there's nothing worse in my experience than that, when people saying, "Oh, we missed you at 1 o'clock."
Yeah. I was late for a class once at Park Royal.
Once? Right, at Park Royal.
It was an EMB call with all the swans, when they do the big Albert Hall thing, and I must have been about 15 minutes late because of tubes.
Okay.
And the whole company are in, and the extras, over 100 dancers, and Loipa's singing.
Oh, you don't want to walk into that.
And bless him, I got you get a round of applause, and I was like, I just want to walk in without being noticed, and because they make a big thing of it. Nothing. I don't like to be late.
Yeah,
not for a class.
There's a story that Colin Scott, and he told me there was a teacher that he used to play for, and it was kind of almost the opposite. She would always start the class 3 or 4 minutes early, so it didn't matter what he did, he would be late. And I don't think she meant anything badly by it. But it was, except that. It was just kind of wrong, because he said and then if he turned up, he would try turning up early, and then she would just continue teaching without involving him until the clock struck whatever it was.
It's a weird way to start. Isn't
It
it
is a weird way to start. I mean, those little moments in class, are quite fascinating.
I mean, you've got lots of stories, haven't you, about teachers, and you're always telling me about Betty Anderton as a character. Do you enjoy working with Betty?
Well, I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, as a character is actually not right, because I don't think she's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's not. What is wonderful about Betty is just what a bloody wonderful teacher she is.
Yeah.
and
she's like royalty, and she's gold dust.
Yeah.
All the stuff that she's got to say and her information.
Yeah. And her humor, I don't know how she does it, because to me, she's no different now to when she, like her energy and her humor and everything, and her dedication to dances is no different to how it was, when I first worked with her 34 years ago.
And was that at ENB?
Yeah, that was at ENB. When she was deputy director at ENB at the time.
Oh yeah.
And she left when they stopped, when Ivan Naj came and took over. He quite rightly, because he'd been in America, he couldn't believe that we were smoking in the studios. And Betty she just got the company together, and bearing in also I left quite an important thing out of the story. the thing that made me decide that I would take the E&B job rather than the office manager's job was because I thought, well, I love Betty. You know, there's one reason to take that job, and it's Betty Anderton. I want to go there because I will work for Betty, and it will be a joy.
Yeah.
On the day that I joined, she resigned
because she couldn't smoke in the studio.
She said, I mean, I'm sure there are other reasons, but that's what she said. She said, I always remember her. She said, "I've got atrophy of the heart and soul, and not being able to smoke in the studio with the last straw." that was such pure Betty, pure class.
I only ever played for her like a couple of times at the old Ron Bear in Chiswick, and you'd be playing something and she'd be wailing over the top, wouldn't she? She'd be singing over your music, but like up in the rafters.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you know, that comes from she was in the, I don't know what the name for it was, but she would dance in the operas first of all at the Opera House, and she absolutely literally loves opera. You know, she had a record collection, and you know, so it's a deep love of operatic singing, and I think that informs her teaching. There's something really elastic and what's the word? I want to say cantilena. There's a word cantilena. Is that well, whatever it is. It's just everything about her class is singing.
Cantabile in a singing.
Yeah, but the word I'm looking for is something to do with cantilena, but I'm just probably being pretentious.
We'll put it on the social medias when we find out. We'll Google it later.
Oh, I know what you can tell us about.
Yes.
This project for the RAD when you redid the syllabus music. Tell us about that.
Well, that was the RAD did. They kind of reviewed their entire syllabus over a period of about 7 years, maybe more. And I was part of that process, and I think that was the most exciting thing that I did at the RAD.
And were you introducing tunes into the syllabus?
If you want to put it that way, yes.
Because before that, it was all composed for the RAD. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it was. I'm sorry, I'm hesitating because it sounds like I had a mission to introduce tunes.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting at all.
In a sense,
I did.
No, in a sense, I did though, because I remember being so horrified when. Excuse me, I'm being so horrified when I first started teaching there. You find student teachers who'd done, you know, maybe 8-9 years of RAD ballet.
Yeah,
and I had absolutely no knowledge of. You know, well, they'd never heard a ballet tune in their life.
Yeah,
I think things would be very different now because with YouTube, you know, and Spotify, but particularly YouTube, you know, now people have heard, you know, they've seen 6 different interpolated solos into Corsair or something, and in fact, it's the other way around. You know, like I remember Constant Van Dorp saying to me, you know, he's at White Lodge. Is he at White Lodge? Yes.
Oh, yes.
And he would come to me and say, oh, you know, the students asked for this solo. Do you know where I can find the music? Because they would be watching these Soviet competitions, you know, on YouTube. And then they'd pick out all these weird things that nobody had ever heard of over here. So it's almost the opposite, that people know more about the ballet repertoire than they ever did, you know, because people are putting up archive material and that kind of thing. So anyway, so
that whole project, were you re-recording all the music for the grades?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a question of compiling it first.
Yeah.
And I guess that, you know, the big story there was the collaboration with EMB Philharmonic.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which actually started out as a twinkle in my eye, you know, about 10 years before, because I thought, wouldn't that be a great idea? You know, because I'd worked at EMB and I knew Paul Allen, the orchestral manager.
Yeah.
And I rang Paul up one day and said, Paul, how much would it cost to hire the orchestra? And I had no project in mind. I'm really interested because that would be such a nice project to do one day. And
what was the answer?
a lot.
Not as much as you'd think, actually.
What year was that?
Well, the year when I made the phone call.
Well, yeah, and when the whole project was sort of...
Well, the recording, I think, was 2011. I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of money. You know, it was by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was slightly higher than it would have been if it was a totally audio recording, because we were doing video as well. It was, you know, there was slightly more. Yeah, so that actually happened by accident, because we well, no, not exactly accident, but we started that we were doing like sort of little ensemble. We had a little ensemble to do some of the stuff, and then when in the middle of the project, we got to the, you know, when it got to Grand Allegro, I thought, what are we going to do now? You can't arrange Corsair coda for, you know, salon orchestra or something.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's just not going to sound like Grand Allegro. And I can't even remember how it happened, except that I remember talking to the producer, Andrew Holdsworth, who I'd worked with actually for 20 years. But we went out for a curry in Tooting and had a gin and tonic, and he almost, you know, spat it over the table when I said, I think we're going to have to hire an orchestra, you know. So, but, you know, we did. And I think the credit there really is due to the woman called Sue Backus, who was the head of trading at the time. And, you know, like, it looks like an artistic decision, but in the end, those decisions are, you know, they're made by the people who control the purse strings and, you know, who got to pay for it. And I have to say, you know, it was Sue Backus and the head of finance at the time, Richard Tom, they went, yes, you know, and that was, you know, everyone would have agreed, you know, wouldn't it be lovely to have an orchestra?
Yeah.
But actually pushing it over that hill of finance people was, that was the achievement. You know, it wasn't an artistic one. I mean, it was. But I mean, do you know what I mean?
The book stops with someone, and it's usually the finance people, isn't it?
Yeah.
To make it happen.
Yeah.
And so you re-recorded all the music for all the syllabus.
Yeah.
And did you choose the tunes?
Well, no, it was I mean, some of them, yes, but there was a panel of us, so the people who actually created the exercise, and there were different processes. I mean, I would supply them with a CD or many CDs of music, and then they would choose from that. Sometimes they would come from stuff, and the later projects, I think they had a kind of focus group of teachers, and they sent out music to the teachers and said, what do you think of this? And there were quite funny things that we had, you know, where the teachers would say, you know, it's the hill that they die on, that they want this piece of music and not that one. So that's how things get in.
And sometimes music choices by committee as well, could it be? Or is it not quite that bad?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's never by committee though, is it? I mean, there was a really interesting one where when it came to the orchestral recording, we could not get we couldn't get a tempo from, and there were two main teachers who were sort of in charge. And obviously, you know, if the recording is tomorrow, you've got to tell Gavin Sutherland what tempo to record it at. Yeah. It's really crucial that you know what it should be. And it's always going to be a sort of middle tempo. It's got to be right for most people.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I rang these teachers up separately, and I said, look, what I don't understand is you're saying it's too fast and you're saying it's too slow. And one of them said, well, that's because what she wants out of the exercise is different from me. For me, you know, sing. And it was as simple as that. One of them wanted to see the picked up something, and the other one wanted the ballon, you know. And so it gave me eyes.
I just love your impressions of ballet teachers. I've got voice note after voice note, and it's so funny.
I hope you're deleting them.
I mean, that's amazing, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
to do a project like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it is amazing to do a project. Yeah, it is amazing to do a project.
And I presume that music is obviously still stands today.
Yeah,
it's all still being used.
All still being used. And Yeah, and I mean, the thing for me was that it was just such an amazing coming together of people. You know, when you look at how the world is now, with everybody kind of at each other's throats, but it was amazing. I think Lars Payne, the orchestral librarian.
Yeah.
Gavin,
Fares was playing. Lovely Fares.
Yeah. But all the people involved, including, the people who sort of signed the project off at the RAD, it was an amazing thing to have achieved. And Andrew and I had been reading a book by is it John Kay called Obliquity, which is about how you achieve things in life by having an oblique goal, like a rough image of where you want to go. If you're too precise about them, you just don't get there.
Yeah.
But actually, if you've got a kind of rough big idea, you get there. And that's how we felt about that project, that we kind of knew roughly what we wanted to do.
Like the end game, like the end result.
Yeah,
almost.
But
like
if you're too focused on a goal, the chances are that you will either get it and be disappointed, or that you just won't achieve it. Whereas, I'm probably paraphrasing badly, but the point is, at the end of it, Andrew and I said to each other, if we would never have, if we had known what this would involve at the end, we wouldn't have planned it that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just grew into something so enormous. If you told anybody, well, it's going to involve, this, they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But actually, as it happened, you just sort of steer a path, and.
But I just think that's a wonderful legacy for someone like you to have been involved and to sort of be, instrumental in making that happen. And what a thing, to leave on the ballet world. I think that's just marvelous.
Wasn't it the first ballet syllabus to have, everything done with orchestra and to be used in exams if the teachers wanted to and things?
As far as I know, And the thing is, people outside can't appreciate. I always remember Chris Hampson saying, and it's got the introductions as well, because this is the thing.
Yeah.
Because it's such, to anyone outside our world, it's difficult to understand what a big deal that is.
Yeah.
That you can have a piece of music that you love, that you've cut to the right size that works for an exercise, and you've put a 4-count introduction on the front, and EMB Orchestra are playing it, and Gavin Sutherland's conducting
it.
You know what I mean? It's that thing. It's like it's like those things where people go out and propose on the boat in the middle of a lake. It's sort of almost too much that you could have that in one tiny exercise.
Yeah,
but that's what it was.
How amazing! Well, I mean, I feel like we could talk for another hour.
But we're not going to.
However, just before we finish, we've got a couple of little quick questions for you.
Oh, yes. The quick fire question round.
All right.
What is your absolute career highlight?
My career highlight, I think, is probably playing for Drink to Me Only with On Eyes for Mark Morris with EMB on stage. Well, that's probably it.
Where was that at?
Well, it was at the Coliseum. It was in Manchester. Like on tour.
Yeah.
And in the Herodotus, what is it called? Herodaticus in Athens. The open air place.
Gosh.
So, but it was the whole thing. It was the whole thing of God knows why I took it on, because it's really hard. I've seen it. I listened back to myself playing that, thinking, I assume it must be I must have played it really badly, but I listened and it's actually not that bad. I must have really practiced, but also working with Mark Morris, and being on stage playing the piano for half an hour. It's a career highlight. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. If you weren't a ballet pianist as a career, what would you have been? If it wasn't music, what else would it be?
Can I answer this for you? Would it have been an office manager for a Japanese company
there
that was
you
just
go.
about to be bankrupt?
I suppose if it hadn't been that, yes, it would have been sociolinguist.
Yeah.
Because I started out in languages, and I've always had a kind of tension in my life between kind of being an academic and playing.
Yeah.
And I just kind of given up. I do both now.
You do. And you do them both very well, actually.
Definitely.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, right.
Did your husband make it?
No, I had.
Bet it was bougie.
It was rye bread
Told you.
with Aldi. Aldi. What are they called? Oh, what's that Italian stuff called?
Prosciutto.
No, yeah,
Parma ham.
Yeah, but no, the things that you get before antipasti.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Lovely.
Very
I think I had-
bougie.
yeah, and lemon drizzle cake.
You're welcome.
And the final one, if you won the lottery tomorrow, what's the first thing you're doing?
The first thing I would do is help all my friends out who are in debt or need somewhere to live.
Oh, lovely.
Oh,
Aw.
yes.
Oh,
Very kind.
including us.
You're not in debt, are you?
I am a little bit. I've got a very expensive wife.
Yeah, I'd help if you came to me with a, like a invoice. Yes, I'd help you.
Okay.
A small business proposal.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Jonathan Still, thank you so much for being on
thank
this
you.
episode.
You're welcome.
Absolutely amazing.